when I get an idea for a bit or when I get an idea for something that I want to say, oftentimes I'll test it out on a friend or something, like just in casual conversation, I'll say it to them. And if it like goes well, then I'll write it down, usually on my phone. And then I write it down and then I try and say it out loud. And oftentimes I'll even perform it and record it and then basically like get up on stage and just take it from there. There are a lot of different factors that affect how you're going to perform in a show. So first of all, the audience itself, sometimes reserved in the beginning and they need people to like warm them up a little bit and then they to their peak at the end of the show. Then there's audiences who are super hyped, super excited in the beginning of the show. And the longer the show drags out, the more and more they lose their energy, the more and more they leave, the more and more they're like not having it. And so it just depends on what kind of an audience you have and what kind of an order you are in within those shows that will make a really big effect on their reaction.
Hello, Lakeshore Comedy Bar. How are we feeling tonight? Guys, this next comedian is extra special. They're not only one of the rising stars of the Toronto scene, but they have done great things in a short amount of time, including opened up for Dr. Jung from The Hangover. They've done a contest, and I think that they're an extra special, rare thing in comedy because they're not only funny, but they're one of the kindest, sweetest people I've met. Guys, keep it going with the very funny Miss Salma Hindy, everybody! Here we go.
So excited to be here. I was a little late coming because my neighbor confused me for their Uber driver, so I had to follow through with the stereotype and drop them off. I'm just kidding, my husband doesn't let me drive. I don't have a husband. I'm single. I'm 27 and single, which to my parents means that I'm old enough to be a mother of 3, but I'm too young to be allowed to stay out past 10 p.m. So I'm an engineer, but I'm still trying to do that math.
It wasn't until I met Zarko Nawaz, who is the writer and producer of Little Mosque on the Prairie, which aired on CBC for, I think, around 6 years. I went up to her and I told her, I was like, one of my like dreams is to become like the next Muslim Mindy Kaling of Hollywood. And then she was like, I think you should just like stick to your like engineering job. And then later that night she spent the evening with me and my sister and we started talking about, like, and my sister was super funny too, so we started talking about all of these stories where my parents tried to set me up with like the strangest people and just like their desperation and their reactions and stuff. And then the next day she told me, she's like, you need to do comedy. And I was like, oh my God, like, are you gonna call up all your connections in Hollywood? Like, do I start acting classes? Like, I had no idea how it worked. And then she was like, you need to do stand-up comedy. And I was like, whoa. Any stand-up I'd ever seen live was so awful. And I just felt so embarrassed for the performer that I was like, I wouldn't wish that upon my enemy. Like, why would I want to do that? I honestly had never really watched stand-up much. So I started watching a little bit of it. And then I went and I saw my first ever live stand-up show in September 2016. It was Trevor Noah. And then I went to an actual live stand-up show in Toronto. And then that's when I kind of like took the plunge. I walked up to the producer and I said, can I come on your show? And he's like, have you ever done comedy before? I was like, no, but like I want to. And then he was like, okay. I remember thinking like me just on stage saying something in like a sassy attitude is enough to like shatter, I don't know, like 6 stereotypes.
I've been wearing the hijab majority of my life. I often get a lot of questions about it. People often ask me, are you hot in that? The answer is yes. But I'm hotter without it! When someone tells me that I'm pretty and I'm wearing the hijab, I'm like, you fool, you haven't even seen me in my final form.
It's just been too long where everybody's telling our stories and we're not the ones saying it. So it's like, if we're not gonna be the ones to say our own stories, then who else is going to do it, right? And they're going to control the narrative. And I think it's very important for us to regain that control, especially because a lot of like the nature in which Islam in particular is criticized always has to do with the oppression of women. I don't even think I explicitly debunk oppression against Muslim women. I think like my existence on stage already debunks it. And I think what I love most about comedy is that I think social justice is so important. I think, you know, having very serious panels about activism is very important. But the thing about comedy is I think that it's easier to swallow and easier to digest for people because it talks about very, like, your job as a comedian is to present things that create like a lot of tension in the room, but then you have to kind of like diffuse that tension. So it's very non-confrontational. That's why I think comedy is such a beautiful art, because it causes a lot of people's minds to be open.
Did you know that the hijab fashion industry is actually a multi-million-dollar industry? Yeah, you know how I know? Because white men are getting in on it. Yeah, should have raided our closets, not our countries, am I right? So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy myself one. So I went on the hijab website and I saw that they just released a new hijab. Now, this literally looks like it was made with like a $12 fishnet fabric sprinkled with some Dollarama glitter. And it was being sold for, I'm not kidding, $325 US. $325 for a hijab? Better freaking wrap me in the arms of God himself. Better blow dry my hair underneath that none of you are gonna see. You know what I'm saying? Better turn into an invisibility cloak when a racist walks by. Like, I want to make sure I'm getting my money's worth.
My proudest comedy-related achievement has been the opportunities that have come my way. I think getting to perform on stage with Maz Jobrani and getting to open for Ken Jeong, even getting to meet Gina Yashari, and then also just developing in the art itself. I think initially I was really scared of anything to do with crowd work or any sort of improv, anything that's like unscripted. But now I am becoming more and more comfortable in my own voice and just kind of going on stage. I think like I will have achieved the ultimate success when I'm able to be my fullest self, like on stage, because that will be the moment when I finally like let go of all the fears that like essentially hold me back.
My parents are originally from Egypt, and they moved to Canada in the 70s, and they had all my older siblings and me. But after they had me, they're like, listen, we just don't think it's stereotypical enough for you to be a Muslim woman, born and raised in the West, living in a post-9/11 world, so why don't we just spice that up a bit and make 9/11 your birthday? Yeah, so my birthday's 9/11. 91191, that's my date of birth. Now I know all my passwords. But I was on the phone with a lawyer one time and he asked me, what's your date of birth? I was like, September 11, 1991. And he was like, oh, that's unfortunate. I was like, the 9/11 or the being born part? Because my parents would agree with you more so on the being born part than the 9/11. I'm just kidding, they condemn both incidents. But really, I don't understand why people get so awkwarded out when I tell them that my birthday is 9/11. Like, where are you going with this? Are you somehow insinuating that, like, my family carried out 9/11 as some sort of a birthday gift? Because they don't like me enough to put in that much effort. Like, they only remember because it's